Welcome to Authors Alcove. I am your host, Agnes Wolfe. Today, I have the author of one of my mom's favorite books of 2023, Jane Rosen. After I started my podcast, I actually asked my mom, what is your favorite book you have read this year? And she said, On Fire Island. So I instantly went up, looked up Jane Rosen. And when I went into my email, I ended up finding that somebody was like, hey, she would love to be on your podcast. And so I was like, yay. So I've been very excited for this. We've had to reschedule a few times, but I'm glad we finally got it. She's not only an author, but she's also a contributor to the New York Times, Huffington Post, Redbook, and Tablet. She splits her time between New York City and Fire Island, which is where that particular book is set. And her debut novel was actually Nine Women, One Dress, and was so successful it's translated into 10 different languages. And her second novel, Eliza Starts a Rumor, has been optioned by NBC. Is that correct?
It's correct.
Yeah, and her most recent book, On Fire Island, which my mom had stated was her favorite 2023, as well as she has a book coming out in 2024 set at the same place with some of the same characters named Seven Summer Weekends. Thank you so much for joining me, Jane.
Thank you for having me, Agnes.
First, could you just share a little bit about yourself and what got you into the writing world?
I was a screenwriter before I was a writer, but I've always been a writer. Well, first of all, I live in New York City in Fire Island. Like you said, I have 3 daughters. I have one puppy who's driving me crazy and exhausting me, but she's very cute. And I've been writing for as long as I can remember. In the 6th grade, this is what I remember as the beginning. I used to write short stories, and my teacher would send me around to the other teachers to read the stories. And I lost my sight of that for a little while in college and whatnot, but I came back to writing, and I've been doing it ever since. First screenwriting, novels.
So have you done anything that we'd heard of as far as screenwriting?
No, I sold a few things. I sold it to Miramax. I sold the script too. I sold a bunch of stuff, but nothing was ever produced, which is really why I started getting into novel writing, because A, I thought, wow, this is a great way to get your movie made if you're writing as a book first. And B, I just wanted to share it with more people than my family. I mean, you write a script, my family would read it, the person who bought it would read it, but the world would never hear your stories unless it got made. So I switched to novel writing, and I haven't looked back.
Nice. So Fire Island is actually where you spent a lot of time. What is about that setting that caused you to want to write not just one book, but now 2?
Fire Island is like my special place, right? And I really wanted to share it with the world, but it took me a while to feel almost capable of writing a novel about it because it meant so much to me. I wanted to do it justice. I had written a screenplay with the same story as On Fire Island years ago, and I kind of held on to it through 4 novels and then said, okay, I'm ready to turn this into a book.
You mentioned that one of the unique things, and actually one of the things my mom mentioned about this particular book, is that it is written from the perspective of a dead narrator. What challenges did you, well, first, just could you share a little bit about the plot without sharing any spoilers so that way people understand what the book is all about?
The book is about a woman named Julia Morse who passes away at the age of 39 or 37. I'm not really sure right now. And gets to spend one last summer on Fire Island with her husband and her neighbors and her best friends. Not really as a ghost, more as like a spirit. So it's not a very like supernatural kind of book at all. It's just she is the narrator. She is like the all-seeing narrator of that summer. And it sounds like a sad book, but it's not at all a sad book. It's funny and it's uplifting. And yes, you would cry when you read the book, but I think you'd laugh more than you'd cry. So that was my goal.
And what challenges did Awesome. What challenges did you encounter when writing it from that particular perspective rather than a live person?
The biggest challenge I found was that when you write a novel from one person's perspective, they have to be in a scene somehow, or they have to be witnessing it, or they have to know, it's not like they're omnipotent, what's the word?
Omniscient. Yeah, omniscient.
Yeah, where they would know what everyone's thinking. So that became a challenge, especially for like sex scenes, that she was like there until she witnessed them. And is that creepy? And that was like a really hard line to toe. But mostly I enjoyed writing it from her perspective. I thought it was a great perspective of someone who lived a life, left a life. Like, it was a very unique perspective, and I really enjoyed writing it. And I studied so much about the afterlife because that was new. The screenplay that I wrote was about three men. It did not have her narrating. It didn't have a narrator at all. So I kind of added in this woman as the narrator so that I have a female perspective, and putting in that perspective of the afterlife and of death of such a young person, it was great. I really enjoyed the process of learning about the afterlife and of, creating this character.
I know that was something that my mom really liked. I think you did a really good job of choosing that particular perspective. And she said that was the one thing that she just really liked and she said she wouldn't tell me how it ended, but she said she liked how it ended and very complete for that person. But what type of research did you do about afterlife?
Oh, I took a class with a rabbi in London online for 6 weeks called The Jewish Afterlife, which was really eye-opening and amazing. Incredible. I learned so much about how in Judaism you're supposed to raise the soul after someone dies. So you visit the grave or you say prayers to raise their stance, their soul in the afterlife. It's a very interesting concept. And that, according to this rabbi, that people could come back, like for weddings. He claims that there are 3 generations of deceased people at a wedding, which I thought was incredible and such a hopeful, wishful kind of thing, right? That you could get married and all the people you miss are still there. I mean, how great would that be if it was true? So that was, I learned a lot from that. And then I saw a medium, which was really cool. And, she brought my mom back and spoke. It was just a lot of things involving the afterlife that maybe I hadn't explored before. It was great.
How did your research play a part in writing the book?
Well, it informed this character, and it gave me a little more confidence that like everything in the book is kind of possible. Before I would have thought this is really far-fetched. And not that she's a ghost, and there's nothing ghostly about her character in the book, but she definitely is around and definitely makes attempts to contact the people that she left behind. So that's how it, worked for me.
I know I have always wondered that's something I've always wondered. Is it possible? Like, I had a foster child who I had her from 1 month to 6 months. And when she was about 3 months old, we put her down and she'd always wave. And finally one day, right before she went back to her mom, I was like, just out of curiosity, this is something I see. And she goes, well, my brother actually passed away while I was pregnant with her. And that made me wonder, why was this 3-month-old waving, and then 6, and she did it throughout her entire childhood. And then she, eventually she just stopped. But when I asked and found out that her brother had passed away, I was like, oh my goodness, is she waving at somebody? Because me and my mom would look at her and she'd just be waving to nowhere. And we're like, what is she doing? And that's just one of those questions you don't know. Like, was she seeing somebody, or was she just being a baby and just waving to nothing?
Yeah, I know. It's like there was a lot that happened after my mom passed away, since I was so attuned with everything because I was writing this book, that I found to be like to almost have no other explanation except that it involved her. One morning I was on Fire Island, the summer before she'd passed. There were dolphins. People said there are dolphins on the beach, dolphins on the beach. So, we ran to the beach, and she was 92. So she had pain. One was not really, in the cards for her, even though she was so spry. And I used to forget that she was not that same person. So we're on the beach and we're walking very quickly to find these dolphins. And she turns to me and she says, Jane, I can't keep up. I'm so sorry. And I said, don't worry about it. Let's go back to the house. I'll see dolphins another time. She passes away in April. I'm out on the beach, early June. It's 8:30 and early in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm supposed to meet a friend to walk on the beach and I'm sleeping. And I dream that 5 dolphins are waving to me from the beach. Very strange, like almost human-like waving dolphins. I get up, throw on shorts, go outside, no shoes, whatever, meet my friend. As we're walking to the stairs of the beach, I tell her that I just had the most realistic dream of these 5 dolphins waving. We step up the stairs and there are 5 dolphins in the ocean. So
That's crazy.
it's crazy. I mean, it's just crazy. It's very, and my friend was like a renowned psychiatrist. She's like, you just had a vision, and she believed it.
Yes.
It was my mother. I really think it was.
I know my grandmother, when her son passed away and her son had a mental illness, and she had actually asked, God or whatever, she asked God, if he is okay, can you let me see a cardinal? And when we walked out of the funeral, there was a cardinal on a tree nearby. And so now whenever I see a cardinal, I think of her. And then my aunt, when she knew she was passing away, she said that she would leave quarters. She goes, because I've heard people leave pennies. And she goes, no, I want you to have actual money. She goes, so I'm going to leave you guys quarters to say hi. And I don't know if she really does or if that's possible, but whenever we see quarters, we're like, oh, that's Kathy saying hi. But anyway, in the blurb, you described that the ripple effect her life has had on so many was an important part of that. And that's like a theme that I find so incredibly powerful. I think it's why It's a Wonderful Life is one of my favorite. What is one of your favorite storylines in your book that really portrays the ripple effect that she had on these people?
Well, I mean, Julia was actually also Ben, who's her husband. She was his editor. So I think that not only did he lose his wife, but he lost his editor. And I think that that had a huge effect on him, in so many different ways, because an editor and a writer are such a partnership, as is obviously a husband and a wife. I think that her best friend suffered tremendously from the loss and did some things that maybe she wouldn't have ordinarily done because she was so distraught. She ended up having an affair with this younger guy. And I think that a lot of that had to do with just being crazed from losing Julia, and her marriage also dissolved. But things like that, like where she didn't put her son first, she put herself first, probably for the first time ever. So, death has a ripple effect. Of course it does, in so many ways.
You also have a book coming out, 7 Summer Weekends, and it's also set on Fire Island. Are these books connected? And if so, how are they connected?
7 Summer Weekends is a novel about a young woman in New York City who loses her job in a Zoom debacle. And just on the day she's supposed to be promoted at this advertising agency that she works at, and she ends up inheriting a house on Fire Island and going there for the summer and meeting 7 guests, and people come every weekend, and the story evolves like that. But so it's a standalone story, but she also meets and forms relationships with a lot of the people from the On Fire Island story. So if you read this book alone, you'll be, if you read 7 Summer Weekends on its own, I think you'll be really happy and satisfied. A matter of fact, some of the reviews on Goodreads now, I could tell that they haven't read On Fire Island. And I think it would be such a surprise to them to know that there was a backstory that they could be reading. So it's kind of either way, standalone, or if you read On Fire Island, or if you want to grab On Fire Island now before June 4th, and then read 7 Summer Weekends, you'd be ultimately satisfied.
What genre would you consider these particular books?
I guess they're women's fiction, although men loved On Fire Island. I mean, it has a lot of baseball in it. So I would just say fiction. I don't really call them beach reads. They are set at the beach. So I guess they are beach reads, but they have substance.
I asked my mom if it was a beach read, and she goes, no. She goes, I feel like it had a lot more substance than a beach read, exactly what you're just saying. And she goes, I would say it's more just women's literature is what she had called it. So I was just curious what you classified it as. But because I feel like women's literature tends to be very rich in relationships, is there a particular book that is very strong in relationships that you really connected with as a reader?
Oh, yes. I mean, I guess my love of reading really started with To Kill a Mockingbird and the relationship between Addison and his children and Boo Radley and all of them. And those are such a character-driven book. And yeah, I really believe that between that and I would say The Prince of Tides and a lot of John Irving books. Like I loved all of John Irving's early work. I mean, Garp and Hotel New Hampshire and Cider House Rules, which are all very, very deep in characters and relationships. Yeah.
Another thing that I saw on your bio that just really intrigued me was you mentioned that Eliza Starts, a rumor, is being optioned by NBC. Is there anything that you can share about that
It's actually
at this time?
it's actually still kind of up in the air. It wasn't picked up by NBC last year, which, as you can imagine, is a very difficult thing to happen if you consider how many Law and Orders in Chicago fires and things that, there's not that many time slots available on NBC. But we're rewriting it and it's going to go out to streamers soon. So we'll see. I fully believe that Eliza Starts a Rumor will make it to the small screen one day because I think it's the perfect spot for it.
So are you part of the writing process, or is it just inspired by your book?
It's inspired by my book, but in this situation, which is I find to be very unusual because I've sold books before and had nothing to do with anything, they really keep in touch with me. They let me read and ask my opinion, and it's been a very collaborative process with these particular producers and writers. So I'm very excited about working with them.
I'm very excited. I hope that it does end up on the small screen. And it would be a series. It's not like a movie. It's a series, correct?
Yeah. Yes, and it's the perfect book for a series. It stars four strong women protagonists. And you could just see, even after the book is over, their lives going in so many different directions. So it could go on for a very long time.
So you actually started as a screenwriter. What is the big difference between writing for a screenplay and then writing for a novel?
Well, it's a lot of differences. So for starters, in many ways, it's much simpler to write a screenplay. You literally are saying, like, Jane and Angie are speaking on Zoom, and then you go into the conversation, the dialogue. It does not matter what you're wearing or what I'm wearing or what the room looks like. Like, all those things are someone else's job when you write a screenplay. So a screenplay ends up being like a page a minute. So let's say if you're writing a movie, it's 90 minutes, right? An hour and a half, so it's 90 pages up to 120 pages. It's not 300 pages. And you're not worried about any of the description of anything. It's literally set the scene as quickly as you can and go to the dialogue and the action. And that's what it is. It's a very simple process. When you're writing a novel, every word, you go over every word with a fine-tooth comb. You want every chapter to be perfect. You want every sentence to be perfect. You have the ability to say what people are thinking. And you have the ability to write these beautiful prose, or try to at least, that would never happen in a screenplay, right? So the only one who's reading the screenplay are the actors and the directors. So, and I guess the people who are dressing the characters and decorating the rooms and setting the scenes, but there's all these different people involved. That is the good part and the bad part. There's also all these different people involved. So the criticism, and I don't want to say criticism, but the amount that the script has changed is unbelievable. I mean, I was once writing a script, my first script I ever sold to Miramax, and they loved it. And they came back with this big note. We'd like the characters to meet when they're young. So I said, okay. And I went back to the drawing board and I wrote this whole scene when the characters met when they were young. And it was great. And I was happy. And it took me whenever time. And I sent it back to them. And they took their time reading it. And then they got back to me and they said, we love this script, but we'd like the characters to not meet when they're young. And I was like, oh, okay. And like, basically, I'm like, here's the script I gave you before. Like, it's crazy the amount of changes that don't really make that much sense because there's so many people involved. When you write a novel, it's you and your editor. Maybe your agent gets involved because, you know, mine does because I asked her to, and she is a great editor. But it's just much different. If my editor says very, you know, not specifically, if she says go deeper here, go wider here, go whatever it is, I just do it, and it's my book. When you sell a screenplay, it's not yours anymore. It's theirs. You know, so that's the difference. You could get fired. When you sell a screenplay, you get fired from the writing of your own screenplay. Like when you watch the movie Tootsie, I could go on and on about this, I'm sorry, but like when you watch the movie Tootsie and you get to the end, there are like something like 10 or 12 screenwriters listed for that movie. And you probably would think, wow, they all sat in a room together and wrote this great movie. That's not what happened. Each one of those people got fired and replaced by someone else until that movie was done. So it's just much different. You know, like this book is mine. I get to help pick the cover and the name and the title, and every single thing about it has my hand in it. So that's the difference in a nutshell.
Do you see yourself ever going back to screenwriting?
I love screenwriting. Like, don't get me wrong when I said all that. I love the process. I find it to be like easy and light, and it's just comes natural to me. I even think I write very visually in a novel. So yes, I would be happy to write a screenplay of any of my novels, but I'm also just as happy to say, here, you do it. Especially for a television show, because I'm really not that familiar with that.
I'm actually very curious about, you know, that whole process, like you're optioning to NBC, and I really hope to see it on small screen someday. But I also wanted to thank you so much for joining me, but I do have a question that I ask everybody. And that is, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to a not yet published author?
That's easy. Do not give up. It doesn't matter how many times you're rejected. If you give up, you're never going to be published. If you keep at it and you just keep going and keep going, you may get there. Don't give up. Keep writing. If one thing doesn't work, start another thing. Put it away. Bring it out another time. Don't give up. That's my advice.
I love that. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Jane. And I also want to just thank my listeners. You can find the links to her website and her books in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, you might also enjoy my interview with chick lit author Stacy Juba or women's historical fiction writer Sammy Bucher. Again, today I had the privilege of talking with Jane Rosen, author of On Fire Island and her upcoming book, 7 Summer Weekends. It was On Fire Island was one of my mom's favorites, so I definitely recommend it because my mom has really good taste, and I have not yet read it. I don't know how I've gone this long and not read it yet, but anyway, you can follow her on Instagram and on her website, janelrosen.com. Again, thank you very much, Jane.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us in Authors Alcove, the Writing Corner. We hope today's discussion has inspired and informed your writing journey. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more writers like you. And remember, we are brought to you today by the letter S, as in Scrivener, your partner in crafting and organizing your story. Again, if you would like to support me through Patreon, that is always appreciated. You can find both of these links in our show notes. You can also listen to us at Authors Alcove, the healing place, where authors share about their books on healing and recovery, or Authors Alcove, the reading nook, where we talk about fantasy, sci-fi, and the occasional horror. Until next time, keep writing, keep creating, and we'll see you back in the writing.